الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبا القاسم محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters, dear ulama who are here. I was asked again just to repeat what I said yesterday at the beginning, that there was a misquote in the email that was sent out. It was not Ali Imran. The surah's name is Ali Imran. So it's not a new Quran or a new verse. They just wanted me to point that out. Now today the topic is two topics, and it felt a little difficult to join them together. One of them is about unity, and the other one is about propagating Islam. So I'm going to speak mainly today about unity, and at the end I'm going to touch upon the propagation of our religion, Islam, inshallah. Now when we speak about unity, I want to go through the Quranic perspective of unity. Whenever we come across a topic, an Islamic concept, we always first have to look and see what it says in the Quran, what Allah Himself has said, what has been revealed through Allah to the Prophet. Then after that we look at hadith and we look at the words of the ulama and we try to put everything together. But the verses of the Quran are the most important things that we have. We have to become familiar with this book, the Quran. We should be reading it on a daily basis, and therefore with this subject I decided to touch upon it from a Quranic point of view, inshallah. With your permission, if you give a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Now unity is an important concept in the Quran. It's a concept that's mentioned over and over. There are even categories of unity that are mentioned in the Quran. So I'll start by reciting a couple verses, and then from there we'll move on and you'll see what I'm talking about. There's two verses that are very similar to each other. And one of them is this: Inna hadihi ummatukum ummatan wahida wa anna rabbakum fa'budun. Verily this ummah of yours is a single ummah. This community, this nation of yours is a single community or nation. And I'm your Lord, so worship me. Now when we look at this verse, first of all, Allah is saying, I am your Lord. When He says that, that's emphasis. It's not something, and Allah is the Lord, there's a couple of sifat that are mentioned. No, He's emphasizing. He's making it, He's trying to point something out here. And what He said before is that this ummah is a single ummah. Emphasizing it by saying, I'm your Lord, and then saying, so worship me. Okay, so that's the first one. Second verse, Inna hadihi ummatukum ummatan wahida wa ana rabbukum fattakun. Almost exactly the same words, verbatim. Verily this ummah of yours is a single ummah, and I am your Lord, so fear me. Right here, the two verses are almost exactly the same. Now, one thing that we have to mention in the Quran, of every single letter in the Quran is mentioned with reason. Nothing is happenstance. Allah, is the all-wise. So everything He says and everything He does with reason. So when you have two verses that are verbatim, almost exactly the same like these two, that shows great emphasis. That shows that this is an important issue. It's an issue that we should pay attention to. It's not an issue that we should just let go by. It's an issue that we need to concentrate on. We need to figure out what is Allah saying and why is it so important? Why is there so much emphasis here? Because Allah doesn't repeat Himself just to repeat Himself. There's a reason behind it. Now, in addition to that, we have many traditions from the Prophet, from the Ahlul Bayt, which state that if someone does so-and-so action, they're not a Muslim. Or if someone does so-and-so action, they are a Muslim. They are part of my ummah. Right? For instance, there's a hadith we have which states if somebody is if a Muslim does not take account of his actions every day, he's not of us. Meaning he's not in our ummah. So that means if we want to be part of this ummah, we have to perform certain actions. But the fact that this ummah, this community of Muslims, is single and unified and comprehensive, there's no doubt about that. In fact, unity is what's called one of the necessities of religion. And has everyone heard that term before, a necessity of religion? No? Let me explain what that is. There's certain concepts or certain laws in Islam that are universal, that every sect of Islam accepts. For instance, hijab. Every Muslim, whether they're Sunni or they're Shia, makes no difference. Every Muslim agrees that hijab is wajib. There might be differences of opinion about what parts of the body must be covered, about how they must be covered. But there being something called hijab, which covers certain parts of the female body, is something that is universal in Islam. So what does that mean? That means if somebody comes and rejects it and says that hijab is not part of Islam, that Allah did not say that a woman has to wear hijab. If they say this, they're rejecting something that's called a necessity of religion, and then therefore the result of this is that they're no longer a Muslim. Now, just so nobody misunderstands me, I'm not saying that women who don't wear hijabs are not Muslim. No, they're Muslim. A woman can decide to wear a hijab or not. That's her choice. If she decides not to, she's sinning. But if she says that the hijab is not part of Islam, that Allah has not said that the hijab must be worn, in this case, they're rejecting something that every Muslim sect agrees with. And in our fiqh, that results in them being taken outside of the fold of Islam. Another example, prayer, salat. This is something that every Muslim knows is wajib. Every Muslim knows that prayer is part of Islam. Aqimus salat in the Quran, very clear. So if a Muslim comes and says Allah did not prescribe prayer, there's no such thing as salat in Islam. This is something that the Muslims after Rasulullah made up. It's something added to the religion. If someone says that, they're rejecting something that's called a necessity of religion, and therefore they are taken outside of the fold of Islam. And again, this doesn't mean that those who don't pray are not Muslim, because there could be people who say that prayer is part of Islam, that I have to pray, but I don't feel like praying, I don't want to pray, I'm lazy, whatever the excuse is. But they know it's part of Islam. In this case, they're a sinner. They should repent and they should start praying. But it doesn't mean that they're not Muslim. Only when someone rejects the concept of prayer being part of Islam are they taken out of the fold of Islam. Is that understandable? Inshallah, there won't be misconceptions on that. Sometimes when I say this and afterwards I get a million questions about that. So inshallah, that was understood. Now with unity is similar. Where unity is a concept, it's mentioned in the Quran. All Muslims, Sunni and Shia alike, they state that there has to be unity, that unity is an Islamic concept. Now there's differences of opinion about who needs to be unified, about how this unity must take place, about what unity, the word unity means. There's a million different concepts, there's a million different opinions. But if someone rejects the concept altogether and says that unity is not part of Islam, Allah does not want the Muslims to be unified. Allah never said that Muslims must be unified. In this case, they're rejecting a necessity of religion. So it's something that's dangerous. And the necessities of religion are also important because there's something that all Muslims agree upon, at least conceptually. Maybe the particulars are different, but all Muslims agree upon it. And this is unity. This is what we want to talk about today. So now inshallah, with your permission, with the loud salawat, we'll get into the different categories. Now, there's three main categories that I've derived from the Quran about this issue. One is the unity of humanity, of Muslims altogether, or not Muslims, of people, of human beings. The second one is unity amongst monotheistic religions. And the third one is unity amongst Muslims themselves. So we see there's different layers to unity. Unity can be addressed in different aspects of this world, of this universe. So the first one, unity of humanity. Let me read one verse, and then I'll explain this verse a little bit. It says in the Quran, Ya ayyuhan nas. First of all, He's addressing all mankind. So Allah is addressing everybody. In the Quran, there's a lot of times where He says, Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu. O those who believe. O Muslims. Here He's talking to everybody, Muslim and non-Muslim alike. This is something for all of humanity to listen to. It's a message from Allah to everybody, no matter what religion you practice, or even if you don't practice religion, to every human being. Then He says, Inna khalaqnakum zakaran wa untha wa ja'alnakum sha'uban wa kaba'il lita'arafu. Inna akramakum indallah atqakum. Inna Allah alimun khabir. And here, the translation of this, O mankind, we created you from a male and female, and we formed you into nations and tribes. Why? So that you may know one another. L'ta'arafu, so that you may know one another, recognize one another. Indeed, the noblest of you with Allah is the most pious of you. And Allah, indeed, is the all-knowing, the all-aware. So this is one verse that we have from the Quran. And here we see that it brings the differences of nationalities that we have, the differences of races that we have, of languages that we have, of complexions, and it puts it into perspective. It shows us that we're not supposed to use these different nationalities or these different cultures or these different races to split people up. Rather, Allah formed us in these different ways to bring us together so that we know one another. And unfortunately, human beings have not listened to this. The majority of wars that we've had throughout history have been over racial and tribal lines. World War I or World War II. When Hitler came, what was his thing? The Germans, the Aryan race is superior, so we're going to fight against everyone else. It was a nationalistic, a racist movement. The Iran-Iraq war, the Arabs all came together and fought against the Iranians. And they made it an Arab-Iranian thing. Arabs are superior, we shouldn't allow the Iranians to have power. They look down upon Iranians. These throughout history, everywhere that we go, every war that we look at, we could see that there's some kind of racial, tribal, nationalistic tension that started this war. So if only mankind would listen to the Quran, would listen to what Allah says, that these differences are not meant to bring us apart, but they're meant to bring us together. This is something that we have to pay attention to. Now, salawat ala Muhammad wa alayhi. Now this concept, it rejects racism. It's an opposition to racism. It says that at least in Islam, at least us as Muslims, if all of mankind doesn't listen to the Quran, we should ourselves. As Muslims, we should listen to the words of Allah. We should try to incorporate the words of Allah into our lives. When He says that, these different races were created to bring us together, then we should use them to bring us together. Where through the travels I've had throughout the Muslim world and centers in the West, I don't see that. I see Muslims have been acting in the opposite. When I was in Lebanon, the Muslims there would look down upon Palestinians, would look down upon Syrians, and they would think that Lebanese are better. When I'm in Iran, Iranians look down upon certain races. I've heard Pakistanis look down upon certain races. And we see this, we see it in the West. Look in the UK. The majority of centers in the UK are race-based, where you'll have a Pakistani center, an Iranian center, an Arab center. Even now they're trying to make like a convert circle or something for all of the rejects. And you're trying to find, everyone has their own racial group, where we're splitting up. We're not coming together. Now, alhamdulillah, in this center, in Woking, I don't think that's the case. We have people, there's an Iranian brother over there. I'm an American. We have people of different races. There was a Lebanese brother who had come last time I was here. And alhamdulillah, we feel welcome here. At least I do. Every time I come here, I don't feel that, oh, he's an American, he doesn't know anything. I don't feel that. But there are a lot of centers who are like that. There are a lot of centers who are, really bad when it comes to these things. I'll give you an example. There's a person I know in the States. She's been a convert for over 20 years. 20, 30 years maybe. I think it's from the beginning of the revolution of Iran she's been a convert. And a couple of years ago she went to a Muslim retreat in the States. And they had two classes, right? One class for the adults, one class for the children. The children were learning how to perform wudu. The adults were learning, aqaid or theology or whatever it was. So when she went to go to the adult class, the Muslims there said, no, go to the kids class. You should learn wudu. Right? She's like, I've been Muslim for 20 years, I know how to do wudu. But they just couldn't imagine that. Myself, I've been places, and when they find out I'm American, because I guess at first glance they don't get that, especially when I have a turban on my head, they don't suspect I'm American. But once they find out, they'll ask me, are you Shia? I'm like, I'm wearing a turban. You can't know I'm Shia or not? I'm telling you, I've been in Iran studying for 10 years in the Hausa. You don't know if I'm Shia? There's against converts, there's a way that people look at it. And I guess you have to be a convert to realize this. But just as a pointer, because as I said, this isn't something that's prevalent here. Here, alhamdulillah, I feel welcome, others feel welcome. But just to recognize that, right here, this is a predominantly Pakistani center. Why? Because in Woking, the Shias are predominantly Pakistani. So that's why they attend here. But you always have to be welcoming. If someone from a different race comes in, welcome them. Make them feel as your brother. Make them feel that this masjid is a masjid for everybody. That's one point you should always keep in mind. And second, when you go elsewhere, when you leave Woking and visit London or somewhere else, you should try to, inform people. If you see people being racist, tell them, no, Islam is against this. In the Quran, it speaks badly against racism. These are a couple of things we could do. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now I'll move on to the unity of monotheistic religions. And this is, first was the unity of humanity, now it's a little smaller circle here. Unity of those who prescribe to a revealed religion. And what we mean by monotheistic are religions who believe in one God. Now, those who are today, we have Muslims, Christians, and Jews. Now, Christians, their belief we know is different than one God. They believe in what's called the Trinity. And the Trinity is, three gods, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. But they say these three are one. And even though that doesn't make sense to us, even though, it doesn't make sense to anybody, they believe this, that God is still one. So we accept them as a monotheistic religion. And it's a revealed religion for sure. Judaism, they believe in one God, but the characteristics of this God that they believe on is different than ours. Right? They believe that Allah's hands are tied behind His backs, for instance. That Allah is not all-powerful. I remember in the Bible, I was reading a story in the Bible before I became Muslim. And it was Prophet Yaqub, Prophet Jacob, was wrestling with God. They're in a wrestling match. And Prophet Jacob overpowered God and put him in some hold or submission or whatever it was. And then when the sun was about to rise up, God begs him, please let me go before the people see me in this position. Right? This is the God that they worship. Now, of course, we don't believe this. Of course, we don't believe Allah has a body at all to be able to wrestle with him. But, still, they believe in one God, and we accept them as a monotheistic religion. Now, that being said, there is a unity that we should have amongst monotheistic religions. Now, you might say, some of them are our enemies, they're fighting against us. But that's not the case for all of them. If they don't want to unify with us, they're not doing their duty. So then we said, okay, but we still have to extend the hand out for unity. There's a verse in the Quran. It says, Inna al-Deen indallah al-Islam. Verily, religion with Allah is Islam. Now, Islam in this verse has been interpreted in two different ways. The first way is the essence of Islam. The second way is Islam as we know it as a religion. So if we take it the second way, Islam as a religion, then, this wouldn't be unity of monotheistic religions, right? But if we take it the first way, as being the essence of religion, we can see that there's an essence, there's a commonality amongst the different religions. But on a side note, I just wanted to make one point. Here, Allah is saying that He's named this religion Islam. It's something that we should take pride in, that our religion is named by Allah Himself. Whereas all other religions are named either by their prophets or the race that follows them. Christianity is named after Jesus Christ. Judaism is named after the Jewish race. Hinduism, Buddhism, whatever, all of these different isms, they're named after someone, right? Whereas Islam, Allah is named. So that's something, on a side note, which is an interesting point. But let's get into the essence of religion. There's a hadith we have from Imam Ali alayhi salam.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
This hadith says this: Islam means surrender. Surrender means certainty. Certainty means confirmation. Confirmation means confession. Confession means being obliged, and being obliged means action. It's an interesting hadith we have. Now, this Islam that he's mentioning here is the essence of religion in general. Not only the Islam we practice, but all revealed religions have a certain essence. And Allah in the Quran has asked us to address the monotheistic religions and tell them, let's come together upon, a common word. Right? Let's read the verse. It says this, Qul ya ahlul kitab. Say, O people of the book, O people of scripture, monotheistic religions, say, Ta'allu illa kalimatin sawa baynana wa baynakum. Come to a common word between us and you. What's this common word? What should we come together upon? Allah na'budu illa Allah. That we don't worship anyone except Allah. Wala nushrika bihi shay'an. And we don't associate partners at all with Him. Now this is something that we all have in common. And it's something that, in these interfaith dialogues that we have, instead of concentrating on the differences between all the religions, we can concentrate on the common points. And we can come together on these common points. You might say, why? What's the purpose of this? Well, there's many purposes. Number one, if we're able to come together as human beings and have, respectful dialogue with each other, then it's possible that they'll learn the truth. They'll see that, wait a second, Muslims are not terrorists. They're not crazy people who beat themselves all the time or whatever. These are rational people. They're courteous. They have good akhlaq. These are people that are we want to be like, and we should act in that way, of course, as well. Now, also, there could be, beneficial help. For instance, let me give you one example. In Australia, there was a very good center, right? The Imam Hussein Islamic Center, an amazing center, amazing community, and they had a sheikh there, a resident alim there, by the name of Sheikh Mansour Lagai, very good person, very high spiritually, knowledge-wise, he's very high, very respected in the Hausa. He was there for 18 years. And he was one of the best people I've ever seen in my life who, in promoting Islam, in doing tabligh, and in interfaith work. Unbelievable. He had a certain visa for a couple years where he had to go to I guess it's something similar to your home office. He had to go to the home office every day and sign a paper that says that I'm in Sydney, every single day. And he would go there, and there would be a police person there who would, watch him sign. He converted 4 of these police officers into Islam, just for this 5 minutes signing the paper and leaving. 4 of them. And he said, I kept converting them, that they made it they made a principle that these people could only stay in that position for 1 week, and then they have to switch, so he couldn't have more influence on others. They're worried he'd convert the whole police force into Islam. He did that. Also, when I went and I visited his center. When I went there, a Christian priest came to visit me, and he said I was so close to Sheikh Mansour, and he started crying. That I was so upset that he had to leave, because he was exiled from the country after 18 years. And when I looked, like they had video footage and things, there were 50 priests with their whole congregations that supported him and went out in protest for him to stay. Imagine that. It is, of course, in this case it didn't work. He was still exiled, but still, that's beautiful. People of religion coming together. This is something we should work for. I remember walking a few years back. I went with the Sayyid. We visited I remember where it was? Some Christian place, some church, Catholic place, whatever it was. These are things we have to work towards, because we can, and it has an effect both in our communities and their communities. So it's something, inshallah, as a masjid, maybe you could put your minds together and think about how to move forward in this arena. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala. Now let's move on to the third category. Unity of Muslims as a whole. So we had of all of mankind, then we made the circle a little smaller, all monotheistic religions, and now we're confining it to Muslims. So Muslims, we must be unified. We can't have disunity. We have to come together. Right? There's verses of the Quran. The verse I mentioned at the beginning, Inna hadhihi ummatukum ummatan wahida wa ana rabbukum fa'badun or fattaqun. Say, or what's verily, this ummah of yours is a single ummah, and I'm your Lord, so worship me or so fear me. Now, there's 2 verses. I'm not saying either or for those who came later. There's 2 verses that say the same thing. These are showing us that our ummah is one. It doesn't say, and the Shias, they're Shias and Sunnis. It doesn't say the ummah of the Shias and the ummah of the Sunnis. It's the ummah of Muslims together. This is something we have to work at. I see among ourselves, right, first of all, when we talk about unity, I want to just make one quick point. There's 2 types of unity. There's a political unity, and then there's an Islamic brotherhood. Right? What we're talking about today is the political side of the unity. Islamic brotherhood is also something very important amongst all Muslims, but that's a whole nother, it's another topic which deserves a full speech in and of itself. So today only on that section, right? So innamal mu'minin ikhwa, we won't talk about that today. But we'll talk about the, unifying on a common ground. There's a verse, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Hold on to the divine cord, to the rope of Allah, all together, and do not divide yourselves. Everybody, all Muslims, grabbing onto this cord together. There's different interpretations of what this cord is, but it's Islam. At the core of it, it's Islam. So we all have to be together holding on to this. Now I see in our Muslim communities, it's something I see that's a problem. On both the Shias and the Sunnis. On both sides of the camps. Unfortunately it's that way. But I see that we spend so much energy discussing and researching about our differences, that if we spent it on unifying with each other, or spent it on spirituality, or spent it on, standing up for the oppressed, or anything else, we'd be so much better. Now, I'm not saying that we have to learn what our religion says. I'm not saying we should stop learning what our religion says on different aspects. We have to know this, but we shouldn't concentrate on it so much. When I was in Luton, there was a Wahhabi center, and this Wahhabi group, they made a pamphlet on the night of Ashura. They made this pamphlet that says that the Shia killed Imam Hussein, and it was about 3 pages, and it just basically bashed Shias for 3 pages. Then on the 10th of Ashura, they distributed this pamphlet into the homes of everybody in that area, in the Muslim area. I got it in my home. I didn't read it that day. It said who killed Hussein Raziallahu an. I just threw it to the side, so I'm not going to read it just today. But the next day when I picked it up, it seemed like they spent a lot of effort coming up with these different arguments, trying to say that it's our fault that Imam Hussein was killed. All of the arguments were, ridiculous. And then the Masjid of Luton, the response is, okay, we need to sit together, we need to put all of our heads together and make a response to this. Print it out and then send it to every house. And I'm like, okay, yeah, it's good to have a response because the arguments were wrong. So we have to know about our religion, that's good. But look at that. All we're doing is these 2 Muslim groups, all of their efforts, all of their energy is just fighting back and forth. And I promise you, no matter how good the answer is, not many of these Wahhabis are going to change their minds. How many of them are going to change? Maybe 1 or 2 tops. Which I'm not saying it's useless, but that's not where we should spend the bulk of our energy. We should spend the bulk of our energy trying to come together, trying to rid these misconceptions, these major misconceptions that we have. They could be solved very easily if we come together, as brothers, having a rational discussion, not allowing emotions to get over us, and talking about certain issues. I was having the other day on the street, I was having an argument with a Wahhabi. And the Wahhabi came up to me, and he didn't know I was Shia, and he started talking to me as a Muslim. And he was talking about some political thing. And I was listening to him, and he kept going on and on. And then I said, look, brother, I agree with almost everything you said right now. Everything you said is good. But I know that because I'm Shia, I told him I was Shia. I know that because I'm Shia, you're not going to want to work with me on it was some political issue I don't want to get into. But you won't allow us to come together to work on this. And he said, oh, you're Shia. I said, yeah, I'm Shia. I'm your Muslim brother. And you're my Muslim brother. Right? And I said, I travel throughout the world, and I try to bring these 2 groups together. I try my best to make us overlook these differences we have and concentrate on all of the common points, because our religions, the sects of Islam are very close to each other. There's a few points that are different, but many of the points are the same. And he started, debating with me about the Sunni Shia issue. And I kept saying, look, it's not important. He said, what do you think about so-and-so person in the history of Islam? What do you think about this person? I'm like, look, he's in the past. Don't worry about it. Right? And I mean, I don't want to get into specifics because of various issues. But the thing is, we have to come together. At the end, I was able to convince him to at least sit down and talk about it. Rationally. Without letting emotions get involved. we'll sit down and we'll talk about the issue. And whatever happens from there happens. But I think this is something we should do. We should know what our religion says. Again, I'm not trying to say disregard these issues. These issues are important. We should know what they say, but they shouldn't divide us as an ummah. We shouldn't allow these issues to pull us apart and make us fight against each other while the enemies are trying to attack us. There's one very famous scholar that we have, and I'll stop this point here with this comment. There's one very famous scholar that we have, one of our top scholars. He said that the Muslims are busy arguing about whether to fold their hands in prayer or put their hands to the side, while the enemy is planning on how to cut our hands off. It's true. All of our energy is bickering over these issues, while the enemy is just sitting there laughing at us, saying, look, they're taking care of themselves. We don't even have to do anything. We just have to throw some salt here, say something there, and they'll kill each other. Right? You just have to incite them, and then they do it for themselves. We have to be aware. We have to be smart. We can't let this happen. We have common enemies who are planning day and night, trying to destroy Islam, where we should be planning as well, trying to protect our religion. This is something that we should pay attention to. Salawatu ala Muhammad wa alayhi. Now the last point that I wanted to mention was something about propagating religion, because this was the second part of the speech I was supposed to give, but I'm not going to spend too much time on it because there's going to be a question and answer as well. I don't want to bore you too much, just a little bit. Now, we have duties as Muslims. There's a very famous tradition from our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It says, "Man asbaha wa la yatam bi umur al-muslimin falaysa bi Muslim." Whoever wakes up and does not give importance to the affairs of Muslims is not a Muslim. We have to care about what's happening. And one of the things we can do is propagate our religion. One of the ways that we could show that we give importance to what's happening amongst the Muslims is that we try to make Muslims better. We try to teach Muslims about the religion. How many Muslims do we know in this city or in the UK who have strayed from the path, who do not practice their religion, who maybe they go to clubs, maybe they drink alcohol? I've heard even worse things from some people. We have to teach ourselves and other Muslims about Islam. This is something we have to do. Now, in America, there's a very famous person amongst the Muslim circle. His name is Imam Musa. I don't think you know him. He's a person who is very successful in doing tabligh about Islam. He has started, I think, 8 or 9 different masjids around America. And what he'll do is he'll go into a city, he'll rent a small little place, then he'll have Muslims move around this place, build it into a masjid, form the center, and then after a couple years, move on to another city and do the same thing. He has many different masjids, many different centers he's formed. Very successful person. He's come to Los Angeles a number of times, and he's slept over at my house in Los Angeles, and he's spoken at my center in Los Angeles. And when I was spending time with him, I'd ask him, I said, what's the secret? How should we propagate Islam? And I'll share to you what he shared with me. He said, when you speak about Islam, when you're trying to teach people, both Muslim and non-Muslim alike, about Islam, you have to concentrate in 3 different areas. First area is the universities. He said, why the universities? It's because young people are leaving their homes for the first time. Most of the time, I don't know in the UK, but in America, most of the time the person will move out of their home and live on campus in a university. And they're leaving, they're on their own for the first time, they're exposed to new ideas, and they're trying to find themselves. So at this time, when you show them, look brother, sister, this is Islam. If you're looking for something, you're searching for something, search no more, here it is. And a lot of people become Muslim or become religious at this time. At the center that I was at, I think at least 80% of the religious people who were responsible of this center became religious during their university years. So it's something before university, they pretended to be little gangsters, listen to rap music, all this type of stuff. In university, they're searching for something. They find Islam, they become religious. Born Muslims, but they come into Islam again. This is one area. Second area is poor neighborhoods. He said, why? Because the people in these poor neighborhoods, more than in rich neighborhoods, are looking for something. They're looking for something to save them. They're in a low point of their lives, and they would be more welcoming to some system, to some religion, to something that could free them from the misery that they're in. So when you present people who are poor Islam, the chance of them accepting it is greater. Whereas you see the Prophet himself, he did this. In Mecca, at the beginning of Islam, the people who were the first Muslims, apart from the Ahlul Bayt, were slaves, were poor people, were people who were rejects. For the most part, not all of them, but the most part, where the Prophet went and propagated to this segment of society at first, before the upper segment. This is the second one. The third one, he says, is prisons. And in America, you see in the prison system, so many people become Muslim. You can't even count. Articles are written about how many people are becoming Muslim in prison. Why? Because when someone's in prison, they're at their ultimate low. They have all the time in the world to sit there and read books. And if somebody just says, hey, here's a book, why don't you read this book? Send him a letter. How are you doing? They change. It's something that's so important for them. They give so much respect to this person. And if you do just a little bit of what's called dawah, as the Sunnis say, a little bit of propagation, they'll accept it. Because they're looking for anything that could take their minds outside of those walls. Right? That could bring their minds to something more important. So these are the three sections of society which he said. So inshallah today, what we did in this speech, we talked about unity. We went over the different categories of unity mentioned in the Quran. Because whenever we come across an Islamic concept, we should always look into the Quran, into Revelation, and see what Allah has said about this concept. And with unity, there's three categories. One was unity amongst humanity. Another one was unity amongst monotheistic religions. And the third one was unity amongst Muslims themselves. And we have to try to unify amongst ourselves. We can't fight amongst ourselves, and we have to try to bring each other together. So with that, inshallah, with the salawat, we'll start the question and answers.
Are there any questions to begin with? If people want to write them down as well. Somebody have a question here?
Should you want to ask that question?
Yeah. Sometimes, previously I've been asked. First of all, I want to welcome our brothers here who've joined us, the Sunni brothers who are here. We welcome you, and we're very happy to see you here. One of the questions I was posed when I was a youngster was that why do we... Maulana mentioned a hadith from Imam Ali alayhi salam. So one of the questions that I was asked is why do we quote from Imam Ali alayhi salam and not from the Prophet? So I was wondering if it's relevant, then inshallah the Shaykh can address.
Inshallah. Well, definitely we quote from the Prophet as well, so we can't say that it's one or the other, right? Definitely we have a lot of hadiths from the Prophet. But in the Shia faith, we accept the Ahlul Bayt, Imam Ali alayhi salam, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, and the Imams from his lineage to be ma'soom, to be infallible, and their words to be guidance for us. So we take their words and we use that to help us guide, and we believe that they're the one, that revelation doesn't come to them. They don't come with new laws, but because they're infallible, they are able to express to us what the laws of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was. So we are able to take that, and that being knowledge that was given to them from the Prophet. If that makes sense.
You have a question?
Sheikh Hameed, what inspired you to become a Muslim? What triggered it?
There's a book you could read. It's called Over the Wall.
Over the Wall?
Yes, and this book explains my whole conversion process. Inshallah.
No one wrote that book.
What was it?
Over the Wall.
Is that you know you sure or is it?
I wrote the book.
Oh, you wrote the book.
An autobiography.
I'm definitely reading it. What wall?
The prison walls.
Is there any national platforms? You talk about unity amongst the different Muslim faiths, but I know at one level you've got to start it from an individual aspect and do it with your close friends. But on a national level, within Muslims, what is there out there that is trying to bring the different sects closer together? Is there anything that you're aware of?
I don't know about a national within the UK. I'm not aware of any group, but there is a group called Sazman Taqrib al-Muzahib, the Center of Proximity of Islamic Sects or something like that. But it's run it's an Iranian-based organization, and they do a lot of work of trying to bring together the sects of Islam. They hold yearly conferences where leaders of very Islamic countries and Islamic sects come together and sit down and talk about the need for unity and work out their differences amongst each other in a intellectual and rational way. They have a journal which is in English called the Taqrib Journal, and you could find it online. Very good articles about this subject, excellent articles. And they do a lot of work. They have a relationship with the Al-Azhar University in Cairo, and it's an international organization, but this is probably one of the strongest organizations that we have that work on this field. If that helps you. In the UK itself, I don't know of any organization.
So just to add, in UK there is one organization called MENAP. All Shia, Sunni, Brahmi, Deobandi, Wahhabi, so all are member of this organization.
Okay.
This is a whole, including the UK. In working interfaith work, we are working for last 5-6 years. It's Working People of Faith. It's a registered charity, and Muslims, Christians, Jews, we are working together. And we have a Working Muslim Forum. Shia, Sunni, Wahhabi, we are sitting together once a month, discussing different issues and trying to bring common things.
MashaAllah. So there's a lot of things going on, even in Woking
and
itself.
we started here now 3-4 years, Al-West Society in Surrey University. So alhamdulillah, they are doing a great job.
Yeah, I saw a few of the brothers yesterday. They came. The questions could be on topic or off topic. They don't have to necessarily be about unity. So any questions that come to mind? Good. Bismillah.
As I say, what does the ulama doing in terms of going out to the other centres across each divide? Like you're talking about unity, being a Shia ulama in a Shia centre. What's going on about either the Ahl Sunnah ulama coming to our centres or the Shia ulama going to the Sunni centres because sure, it's got to be led somewhere as well from the ulama to some extent to see how we're going to overcome the divides. And a lot of the arguments, like you said, theological, technical arguments, which here they don't really concern us, because I speak to a lot of my friends and I say to them, look, God said to us we're going to go 6 foot under, and on the day of judgment, whatever actions I do, I'm going to be judged upon. Whatever actions you do, you're going to be judged upon. So let's leave it to that, and let's get on with each other now, and let's see what we can do going forwards. But how are you working on trying to go to them centres or those centres or those ulama coming to our centres?
Yes, the organization I mentioned,
yeah.
It's not only Shia ulama who are a part of this organization, there's Sunni ulama as well, and the link that they have with the Al-Azhar University is very strong. So Sunni ulama come to Iran and discuss issues, and Shia ulama go to Egypt and discuss issues. So there is a relationship, and this as you said, it's at a purely intellectual level at that point, because they're both houses. The Al-Azhar University is a Sunni seminary, and the Shia, this organization is in Qom, so it's part of the seminary. So it is purely on this scholarly level. As the Maulana said, he himself goes to different centers and churches and things and works on the interfaith, field. And I know of others, in the UK who also do similar things on these small scale levels. So I mean, there are definitely, people are definitely moving towards it, but definitely not enough. I mean, it's nowhere near what it should be. And because of the lack of enthusiasm about this issue, we see that a lot of these problems, stir up and there's no answers for them. But if we are more active, we're proactive on this issue, then maybe a lot of these problems will be solved. At least, as you say, they'll be brushed under the carpet and we'll be allowed to move on with our daily lives and stand up as a unified force. If you look at the Jews, for instance, the Zionists, the enemy Jews, not all Jews are Zionists. But if you look at the Zionists, there are many different camps of Zionism. There are different sects, there's different ideologies, and they fight with each other like no tomorrow. I mean, they're enemies of each other. But when it comes to the outside world, they're one unified force. Right? If Muslims were like this, we'd be very strong. But we're not. And it's something that both ulama and people have to work towards. The people should encourage the ulama, and the ulama themselves should, recognize the need and inshallah work towards it.
Do you reckon the American strategy, which is divide and conquer, has got a big role in separating Shias and Sunnis apart?
Definitely. There's a think tank in America. It's called the Rand Corporation, and I read their reports on how to divide the Muslim Ummah. And many of the things that are happening, many of the divisions that are happening are step by step according to what this was, and it was published years ago. And we see that many of these things are coming to light. I'm not saying that 100% foreign policy is dictated by what this group suggested, but definitely, I mean, the West is definitely playing a part, and they're trying to incite sectarian violence, and it's working in their favor. Whenever Muslims fight against each other, it works in the West's favor. So they definitely try to instigate things as much as possible, both nationally and internationally.
So what's that corporation called, sir?
RAND, R-A-N-D.
I just wanted to say, it's a religion, I'm not 100% sure what it's called, but Ahmadis or Ahmadiyya? Yeah, something like that. And this guy in there who was from that religion, I didn't know first, so I got really good mates with him. And then I found out what religion from, and I don't know a lot about that religion. I told my mum. My mum goes to me, stop hanging around with him. I was just like, why is that? What party is this?
Apparently they believe in a prophet after our prophet, so they're taken outside of the fold of Islam.
I see him on telly, yeah, you see him on telly.
I've never seen them on telly.
Their headquarters in this area.
MashaAllah, okay.
Mulana, as far as I know, there's 73 different sects in Islam, and according to some hadiths, there's only going to be one that's going to go through to heaven. Could you just expand on that and how unity can play a part into this?
There's a very famous hadith which says that, but the hadith itself is being a credible hadith or not. There's a debate around that. So it's possible that the hadith is not a true hadith, although it's famously recited from mimbars and in books as well. There's an article that I saw about this, right, and it's basically it knocked the credibility of this hadith, saying that the hadith is both from the chain of narration, it's not credible, and from the content of the hadith, it's not credible. So it's not something we should concentrate on, first of all. Second of all, the message of one group going to heaven, right? There is only one correct way. There is only one correct Islam. There's no doubt about that. Allah didn't come and make multiple religions. Okay, so there is one form of Islam which is correct. That's true. But what that form is, we have to do our best as Muslims to find that. And between us and Allah, we should have certainty, we should have yaqeen that we are practicing that religion that Allah has brought down. But that doesn't mean that we could judge others. That we could say, oh, if I believe with certainty that I'm following the right way, so that means all other Muslims, you're wrong and you're going to hell. No, we can't judge other people. We don't know how Allah is going to judge other people, right? So it could be that a person is in a situation where they're unable to learn what the exact correct path of Islam is. Then Allah will judge them in a different way. So that's one thing, we shouldn't pass judgment on others. So we should be very careful. Thank you.
Quite than yesterday.
Well, I got a last question. When a Christian or a Jew dies, do they get an option as well in Judgment Day if they want to become a Muslim and go and wipe off, or do they just?
When one dies, their test is over, and whatever they believe or whatever they did in this life, that's it.
Yeah, what about when Imam is Mana comes? No, I heard that. I heard that Gore, they're kafirs. They're kafirs. They'll get the offer to come back to.
When Imam Zaman alayhi salam comes and people are still alive, yes, people can convert into Islam just as they can do today. And anyone who converts into Islam, all of his previous sins are forgiven, and inshallah his repentance would be accepted, and he will be judged as a Muslim from that day onward. So yes, definitely when the Imam comes, people will have the choice to accept him and accept Islam or not, just as they have the choice today if they want to accept Islam or not.
Can you just clarify that? Is it true that any people who associate anybody else with Allah, they're known as kafirs and they're najis, basically? Is that correct?
Anyone who believes that there's another God
other than
Allah is definitely not a Muslim, and they're najis. Yes.
But you get people that are the Musaris, they believe that Imam Ali is God, and they're spreading like wildfire, literally, in a lot of places in Pakistan. They're spreading fast, and basically, are they believed? Are they like najis? We can't make contact with them.
Like dog touched you, or
yeah, something like that.
No,
so are they labelled as kafirs, even though they'll probably take part in the shura processions or whatever? So they are labelled as kafirs.
Whatever group you're saying, I don't know them, but I could discuss an ideology. If somebody believes that Imam Ali alayhi salam is God, is Allah, then yes, they're kafir. But if this group that you're mentioning believes that or not, I don't know.
But the gates of heaven will be open to anybody follows, whether you're a Muslim or not, whether you're Christian or a Jew, whether you follow your religion according to how the book says. So will Allah give you leniency and allow you to come to heaven? If you're a Christian and you're good Christian, and you sip your red wine once a day, according to how the book say it, what I'm trying to say.
I don't know if sipping red wine once a day is a Christian practice.
I'm sorry. But regarding you following your religion according to how it should, whether you're a Muslim or not, will God allow you will He allow you into the door of heaven?
During the time of Christianity, before our Prophet, yes. Once our Prophet came, if they reject the prophethood of our Prophet, then they're rejecting religion. So then that means that they're rejectors, and they have to change their beliefs. So during the time of Christianity, yes. During the time of Judaism, yes. But now it's the time of Islam, so you have to be Muslim. right? Now some people don't have some people might be, there's different types of ignorance, right? There's a debate amongst some ulama, whether, a Christian, for instance, in the Bible Belt in America, who would never look at Islam as a valid religion, whether they will be, punished for not becoming Muslims or not, that's debated. But definitely it's a duty for them to accept our Prophet.
One question for the ladies as well. Sanjida Zani, when during Ashura, I just want to clarify this because I've heard a lot about it now. There's also a website called azadari4imam.com, and it tries to justify Zanjir Zani. From childhood, as I've grown up, I've been told that it's actually it's not permissible to do it, and I've actually disagreed with people who have done it in the past. Heated up debates I've had with them. On this website, it says some of the big Shia alims are saying it's permissible. And from what I've heard, it's not, and they also say it's not. So is this website lying, number one? And number two, can you just officially state what the position is from, say, let's say, Ayatollah Khamenei and Ayatollah Sistani, because most of the Shia following around the world is through those Marajas. So just wanted to ask, what's the outtake on it?
Can I add this question, because it's very similar and it's related. There's a question from the sisters. When it comes to Zanjir or extreme matam, which leads to bleeding, how do we justify that in front of other religions and Muslims?
Okay, so questions about Zanjir and strong matam which leads to bleeding, and the azadari for Imam, right? Or Islam?
Azadari for
whatever, the azadari for whatever, yeah. First of all, when we are looking for the viewpoints or the opinions of the Maraja, we should go to their websites. We shouldn't go to any other website. I don't care if I myself run that website. We have to look at what they say themselves. So if you have a question about Zanjir or Kamazani or whatever, you should go to the website of your Marja and see what he says. And it's available for everyone to look at. All you have to do is Google his name, find his website, and read it. It's not very hard to find. That's number one. Now, how we explain Zanjir and these things to other sects or other religions, I don't know. All I could say is that, the important thing is mourning for Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and we're encouraged to mourn for Imam Hussein. We have hadiths that the Prophet himself mourned for Imam Hussein. We have hadiths which tell us that, for shedding a tear for Imam Hussein, you get so many rewards. And this is something that we practice. It's something that we're encouraged to do. Now, our expressions of grief are in different ways. Some people, I was listening to a majlis in the time Dr. Shamali was given. And he says, this was the issue of his topic. His topic was about, how to mourn for Imam Hussein. He said, unfortunately, Muslims today, we look more on the methods of mourning instead of mourning itself. So we look at matam, for instance. Is it better, the Pakistani way of matam, is that better, or the Iranian style? Is that better? Is doing Zanjir better or not doing Zanjir? We're thinking of the methods. We're not looking at the essence. The essence is we should be sad. Imam Hussein gave his life. He went through, what happened to him should make us sad. We should grieve. And however that's expressed in your culture, if it's within the boundaries of Islam, Bismillah, it's fine. Grieve publicly, right? Now at that site that you mentioned, I've seen myself some things that are uncredible, that are mistakes at least on that site. So I would, as I said, I would suggest people go to your Marja's website and see what he says. If it's an issue that's of importance for you.
A few other questions from the sisters. We'll take your question and we'll do the other ones.
Okay. The Prophet peace be upon him said that I have not bought Islam as a new religion, but I've bought it as to revive the past religions. Now, if he said that because Christianity and Judaism had sort of gone astray, basically. led away from the original teachings. Now, if Christianity and Judaism stayed original and were basically didn't change at all, would Islam have come?
I don't know what that hadith is. I haven't seen it. You'd have to show it to me. But yes, Islam would still have come, because there are things in Islamic religion which are additions to what we have of the Judaism and Christianity. So there are new things. The Prophet did bring a Sharia, right?
One of the questions is, do you have any books that you can recommend which have been translated into easy English?
Books that have been translated into easy English that I could recommend for Islam?
Yeah, it doesn't say, I guess.
Easy English. Unfortunately, we don't have many books in easy English. We have very bad English, which is very difficult to read, but we have very scholastic English, which is also, for the majority of people, difficult to read. It's a field that we're lacking in, and that we should put effort in to trying to find books that are written about Islam in easy English. There are some books that I've translated. You can find them on the website muntazar.org, muntazar.org. There's also a lot of books that you can find on alislam.org, al-islam.org, and they have the books that they put up there. A lot of them are edited. So the books you get from Ansariyan or whatever, which are in bad English, the site edits them and tries to, make the English a little more reader friendly. So inshallah, you could use those sources.
One second. You got two questions. I've got one more question here, then we'll go to Hassan and then the other Hassan. Do you consider yourself a convert or a revert, and what's the difference?
A convert or a revert. A revert is the word revert is used because we say that when a person is born, they are sinless. They're Muslim, right? Now, of course, if they're born into a non-Islamic family, the laws that pertain to them follow their parents. But this child has not committed a sin and is not questioned for whatever beliefs he has until he reaches adulthood. So because of that, if someone changes his religion into Islam later on in life, a lot of people like to use the term revert instead of convert. And it probably is better to use the word revert, but that's the rationale behind it.
I've heard that when Imam Zaman comes here, as Isa and the Sadiq, I never heard that there's other Imams going to come. Is there any other people? Now I've heard 313 generals going to come with soldiers and all that. Yeah, but I never heard that there's going to be like other Imams going to come as well. Like, you know what I mean? Other spiritual.
Yes, the other Imams will come after Imam Zaman. Now, as I said yesterday, I don't know if it's going to be every single one of them or what order they'll be in, but we do believe that.
What would the role of Hazrat Isa be? What would he do? Obviously, what's the reason behind him coming as well?
Well, as Allah knows the reason and his exact duties, it's mentioned that he'll be praying behind Imam Zaman al-Islam. Yes. So that means Imam Zaman will be the leader and he will be, a worker for the cause. Of course, a very respected worker and a prophet, and someone whose level is very high. But one could infer from the world situation that he will go to the Christians and tell them that, look, I'm not God, I'm a prophet, this is me, I'm Jesus. Change your beliefs, and hopefully they'll listen to him.
Hassan, your question?
Well, leading up on the Jew question you got, you said that it's got to be like to the Islamic boundaries. What are those boundaries? Can you specify at all?
It seems some of these questions are being repeated over and over again.
You can't speak the language. For example, someone might say to you that it's in the Quran that you can't hit yourself, for example, you can't hurt yourself. Can you specify at all with the boundaries that you're talking about?
Well, we'll let the Muraja pencil in the boundaries, and these issues are best to go to the top scholars and look at them, because they're, number one, they're controversial, and number two, there's a lot of differences of opinion and a lot of interpretation that some ulama give, right? Whereas we receive all of our guidance, all of our religious laws from the Muraja. So we have to go to them and refer to them and see what their interpretation of the principles of Islam and what the Islamic boundaries are, and whether Zanjir fits within that or not. So I'm not a person who is, I'm not a marja, right? All I could do when it comes to Islamic law, the only thing I could do, I have zero authority to tell you a law from myself. I'm not qualified to do so. Only the Muraja are qualified. So the only thing I could do is reiterate what they say. So what I'm suggesting to you to do is to go to their site and see what they say. Do a little bit of research and you'll find out.
Do you know, again on the same subject, do you know if the Muraja have a difference of opinion on this? And if so, why do you have a difference of opinion on such a subject which causes conflict within the Shia?
There are differences of opinion amongst some ulama. Differences of opinion amongst the Muraja stem for a number of reasons. When the longer you stay in Qom and the more you study Islam, you see that there's many principles and many hadiths, many I don't know the English word, but let's use principles. Many principles that go in deriving an Islamic ruling. So when a marja looks at any ruling, forget about this one, any ruling, right? What they have to do is they have to take all of the hadiths and the verses of the Quran about that ruling. They put them, let's say, on a piece of paper. Then they have to look at all of the different principles that we have in Islam and try to see, how these hadiths fit in with each other, how they fit in with those principles. And then they look at the words of the elder ulama and see if there was a consensus amongst them or not. And then they put all of these things together and they try to derive an Islamic ruling from that. Now, there could be one, marja who accepts a principle and another one doesn't. There could be a marja who says that the scope of one principle extends 80% and another one says only 60%, whatever. And then because of these differences that they have amongst the principles of Islamic jurisprudence, they will trickle down into differences amongst the laws that were derived. And it's a very detailed and lengthy discussion, and it takes years to learn what the principles are and to try to figure out which ones are credible and which ones aren't. And there's definitely differences of opinion amongst that. So it's unfair to say that Muraja, out of all of these hundreds of, not hundreds, but all of these principles we have, you all have to have the exact same opinion about them in order for all of your rulings to be the same. That's just not practical. That's what ijtihad is. Ijtihad means that these people, they go through the studies to such an extent that they're able to use the sources, but they also have to use their minds. And they look at the sources and they figure out between them and Allah, with all sincerity, they say, look, this is what I understand from these hadiths and these principles. This is what I understand. Between me and Allah, I think this is what Allah wants. And another one comes and does the same thing. And they can't force their opinions on each other because they're sincere. They're saying, between me and Allah, this is what I understand from it. Right? So there's going to be differences of opinion. And that's not wrong. That's not bad. It's just, people are different. People have different minds. There's no way that everyone in this room, we could give someone one paragraph. Everyone will read it and come to some different conclusion about it. Let alone, 10 years, 20 years of studies. Right?
Well, I had an atheist friend of mine saying he obviously disagreed in believing in God, and he referred as when Satan was set, when he was casted out of heaven. Why would God hate his own son as human beings? Obviously, I don't believe he was born, right? So he referred that scenario of him not believing in God purely because how can God allow us to live in so many atrocities? Yeah. Why is he allowing us? Yeah. And he was asking, I disagree with God fully, because it's hard to believe that how we could all be hurt in this day and age. So obviously it's good versus evil. God is punished. And why is he winning us over? So a bit of,
This world there's a few things about this world. One, it's material, right? The world is a material world, which means that it's not infinite. Things will die. When things die, people will become upset. Right? Nothing is going to last forever. It's just the nature of the world. Number one. Number two, Number two, this world is a test. When it's compared to the life that we're going to have in the next world, it's like a blink of an eye, right? And we're tested in this world. If we do what's right, we'll live an eternity of bliss in the next world, which will be far greater reward than what we deserve even. So to go through a little bit of hardship for that return seems rational.
You would disagree with obviously God fully, just like how Satan has obviously that. So obviously.
Well, Satan doesn't disbelieve in Allah. Satan knows Allah exists.
My friend is atheist, he was just referring as like not believing in God because how could he allow us to be?
Well, then you should work on the existence of God with him and then get into these issues.
I've got one last question, inshallah, and we'll wrap it up. The question is that how should we be preparing our children to be strong against this Western society?
How we should prepare our children to be strong in Western society. It's very difficult. It's a very difficult task that parents have in this country or in Western countries. One thing that we have to do is we have to do a number of things. We have to try to give our children a sense of love for Islam, a sense of identity as a Muslim. And this is very important because children, when they grow up, they look to fit in somewhere. And if there's no religious environment for them to fit into, they will try to fit into a non-religious environment. So either with our families, or with our masjid, or with like-minded people that we know of similar ages, that have children of similar ages, we have to get together and create this environment for them. If we're able to create this little bubble environment where they feel a love for Islam and they feel a sense of belonging to this small group or masjid or whatever it is, then this could help them. This could help them to be religious in the future, inshallah. Just one small pointer. It could be a whole series of lectures on that question. Is that it? That's fine. You want to continue? It's up to you. Sorry. This one?
Salawat.
Isn't it a bit dangerous saying, just get in a bubble, be with like-minded people? Wouldn't you then narrow your vision down a bit to the rest of to what's going on around you? Is that what the idea is?
You're still living in the society. It's not that you're, going into the woods somewhere and building, having guards, protecting,
That's what he's telling my cousin. But it brings me on to my question about Christmas. I think I spoke to you about this yesterday. What's the big deal? Get a tree, celebrate. Your kids are going to schools around here. I'm playing devil's advocate now because I heard your reason yesterday. But a lot of people, friends of mine, they don't see the problem in buying a niece or a nephew a gift.
Why not?
What's the issue with that?
Well, first of all, we should do that for Islamic holidays. On Eid, on the Prophet's birthday, for Islamic holidays, we should make big, and we should make part of our culture. And alhamdulillah, in the UK, there's a large percentage of Muslims, where if every Muslim, comparatively, if every Muslim does this, makes Eid a very important day, it will actually become part of the English culture. And then we'll have our own religion. And our kids in school will say, what present did you get on Eid? Instead of what present did you get on Christmas? Right? So that's number one. Number two is we have to, we don't want to assimilate 100% into their culture. Because if we do, you're talking about one act. The act of giving someone a gift on Christmas. Right? But it's not just that one act. When we're trying to assimilate and make our children like the other children, so they don't, they feel comfortable or they feel at one with the Christian society, that's also dangerous in the sense where it's going to be very hard for them to retain Islam. They're not going to see a need. They're going to try to fit in 100% with the English culture, the British culture, and they'll turn away from Islamic culture. So there has to be, a separation. There has to be, and that seems harsh, but that doesn't mean that, we're against, the common person living in England. That doesn't mean that we're trying to, be 100% different, or we can't live together. We can't live peacefully. Yes, we can live peacefully together. It's just that, we have our culture and you have your culture. There's no, as we say in America, they used to say that, there's a mixing bowl, or a mixing pot, right? Where when a person comes from a different country, whatever country it is, they bring their culture, right? Then they have children, first generation, second generation, and third generation. They say that in the third generation, their children should be American, 100%. They shouldn't be able to speak the language that their parents came from. They should have no cultural affiliation whatsoever with the country that their parents came from, and the religion that their parents practice should be completely disregarded. This is what the melting pot states, right? And even in America recently, they changed this. Like when I was in school in America, they used to teach that. They used to encourage that. Where by the third generation, you should be 100% American. You should have disregarded your heritage 100%. Only American, right? And if you do things like that, that's what will happen. But now in America, they say no. The mixing pot idea is not good. Because culture is not bad. Diversity is not bad. What's wrong with having a diverse, country? What's wrong with that? So it's not a melting pot anymore. Now it's a salad bowl, they call it. So you don't mix and become one. You are one community with different cultures living together side by side. What's wrong with that?
So, when you're talking about this bubble, you all get together, like-minded people, that way it's good for your children. I mean, the question that one of the sisters said was against the West. What can we do to curb this against the West? Why do we have to be against the West? And number two, a lot of the guys here now, they're raising their own families, especially the younger lot, myself included. We're going to have to think about our children in the schools. In middle school up to secondary school, there's going to be all sorts of barbecues and summer fates, mixed events. What do we do in these situations? Are we going to try and how do we deal with that? Because that's a big issue. What are you going to do? You're going to jump into the barbecue and say, hey, I'm a Muslim, put my vegetable samosas and a lot of meat in there. What are you going to do? There's a lot going down.
Yeah, well,
how are we going to integrate?
How many barbecues have you invited to?
I've been invited to a church birthday party, for example.
Great.
And I didn't want to go because it's
because you wouldn't eat?
No, because I thought someone might find out until you went to church.
Look, we have certain laws. We have to follow these laws, right? But that doesn't mean we can't mix with the society. It doesn't mean that we have to, be enemies to the society. What we should be trying to do is retain Islam. Islam is number one. We want our children and ourselves to be mu'min, to be believers. And we will do what we can to ensure that, right? Now, one thing is moving together. In Luton, for instance, I took my children to a nursery school. And the nursery school was a non-Muslim nursery school. The woman, it was a white woman who was not in hijab, not a Muslim, who was the head of this nursery school. And she told me, she saw my wife was wearing hijab. She said, okay, you're Muslim, we have halal food. We serve all halal food. Why would she do that? Because there's a large Muslim population there. So they're forced to serve halal meat. If they don't, they're not gonna have, any customers. So that's one thing you could do. As I said, when you move together, when you're with each other, you have some sort of power that you could use.
ask for halal food.
Ask for halal.
I'm just going to take one last question, inshallah. This is the final question.
Yeah, my Catholic mate, he goes to me, Christmas is actually Jesus' birthday. If it is, we can come and celebrate as the prophet of God's birthday. Come and celebrate it still.
It's not Jesus' birthday.
Is it?
Pagan festival.
And also, what's it called? But as I said yesterday, our ulama have encouraged giving gifts to Christians on this day. It's not bad to partake in it in that way. It's just we don't celebrate it. We acknowledge that they're celebrating it and we give respect to them, and then hopefully they do the same for us with Eid. Again, there's one family I know in Luton. Their neighbors give them Eid cards and then they give them Christmas cards. Living together in harmony, inshallah.